So I ask you, what can you do today to make your brand come alive in the hearts of those who experience it?
Yeah, pretty place.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad you could join us today. It's 10:59. I'll probably let things go to like 11:02 or so, partially because when I go to share mode on my screen, I can't see the individuals that are trying to get in, or I guess I can see them, but I have to actually exit out of the screen to bring them in. So that may or may not occur today, but if it does, please bear with us and we will just get back into it. But that gives everyone the chance to participate, which we absolutely want them to do. Let's get started. Let me go to the slideshow presentation. All right, so the first thing we need to think about when we're talking about the connective economy is the idea of cohesion and creating cohesion. And what I share is that brands work when they lock into people's needs, when they do what's expected, but in smart ways. So in one level, they're doing something that we anticipate, but at another level, they're doing something that is surprising in a good way. And brands need to understand that because the economy is so connected, we have to continue to evolve the way we approach our consumers, our fans, our enthusiasts, because their attitudes and expectations are changing constantly. Their expectations are getting higher and they're influenced, which changes their attitudes on a day-to-day basis. And so as consumers place emphasis on different priorities and as competitors bustle around looking for footholds, we have to be adaptive. And so that's what I want to talk about today as we try to build cohesion and have a justification for why we should continue to fill the minds of our fans and consumers and enthusiasts. So let's look at some customer relationships with brands. First, our brands endorse our aspirations as consumers and provide us with security and reassurance in our working lives. I talk about brands. We know that brands help us feel a level of comfort. They take away the uncertainty. They give us a sense of trust. They give us a sense of the value that they contribute. And they also give us a badge for enabling us to be able to reflect who we are as individuals. And so these are important elements that brands bring. Excuse me just for a second. Stop share. Yep, I've got one more gentleman trying to get in. Welcome. All right, let's go back to sharing the screen. Okay. We judge brands against our overall expectations of what will come our way and how, right? So every brand gives us their universe, and in that universe, we grow to expect what we're going to see from them. Example, most of you, if not all of you, go to Starbucks and either buy a coffee, cold or hot, or some other kind of drink, a frappuccino, a tea. Potentially you've also bought a food element, whether it's a breakfast sandwich or a dessert. And we have an expectation from the brand of what we're going to get. And the expectation is high because they've set the bar high. And so when the expectation is not met, and that's not only in the quality of the food, but the delivery of it and the experience we get, then that relationship can get tarnished. So as a result of this, brands take on an increased relevance, which also increases the level of criticism and skepticism we have, right? You know, we sometimes tend to bash brands that we like when they don't deliver for us each and every time. So the expectation level gets higher and higher and higher. And that's partially because of our expectations as individuals, but it's also because of what the brands are doing to build that expectation, right? They're constantly raising the bar. And on top of that, their competitors are doing the same thing, trying to draw us away from the brands that we know and trust to give them a try, right? And to build preference and loyalty with them. So brands must also operate within a broader context now, more now than in the past. And they must compete to be included and to stay included, right? The status quo is not going to be sufficient. I think we have one more person, bear with me. Yes. All right, back to start sharing my screen. So let me just jump forward. Sorry about that. All right, I'm seeing a little spinning of the wheel. Here we go, jumping forward. So, social media sites, right? And we know them all. They serve as megaphones. They're constantly blaring in our ear, either figuratively or literally, right? They're conversation drivers. We have influencers telling us what to think and how to think. There's so many videos that are taken, that are brought to us on every one of these platforms, guiding the way we should think and believe about the brands that we love and about the way we exist in this, this economy and in this current state. They also tend to be trend spotters, right? Somebody has a YouTube video they put out about something interesting or exciting, it catches hold, and the next thing you know, it's shared by millions and millions in a matter of days. And the other side of that happens as well too, right? There's outrage that can happen. We are seeing a lot of that today with all of what's going on with COVID-19, right? You got one camp that's saying, don't do anything that can hurt someone. The other side saying, if we don't do anything, we're going to hurt someone even more. And so you've got this dialogue, and sometimes it gets really loud, and sometimes, unfortunately, it gets offensive. I think we have one more person, so bear with me. Yes, thank you. Actually, two people. Okay, so they're the musterers of outrage as well. Well, this is a good day. We're getting a lot of people asking to join, but it's also slowing us down a little bit. Not a problem. Thank you guys for joining. So the last part I wanted to share about the social media is all of this is happening simultaneously. And if you're like me and like most people, we have at least two, if not three or four different ways of taking in this media. And typically we do take it in multiple ways. We might be watching television with our iPad on our lap and our iPhone in our hand, or we got our desktop on our, on our desk, or we have our laptop, and we're watching, listening, and absorbing all of this simultaneously. So let's take a broader look at the connected economy. It's omni-channel, right? It is available to us in so many different ways, so many different platforms, all occurring at the same time. It's happening 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's powered by trends. So we're getting the influence of trends and what they're doing in our lives. It's also powered by enthusiasts, and it's focused on experiences. And all of this is linked by networks and the stories that people are telling each other. And so you can see it's a bit of a roller coaster, right? We're getting swayed one way, we latch onto that, we like that, and the next thing we know, we hear about something else that is drawing our attention away to a different pursuit. One more joining in. Welcome, everyone. So as you can see, all of this creates a little bit of chaos in our own minds. And I'm sure for some of you, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You almost feel a bit whipsawed by all of the connectivity and the influence it has on our lives. The way that brands are trying to talk to us more and more on these different platforms. If we think about television today, it doesn't look anything like it looked like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or even last year. And that's just one platform now that we live in and use in our lives. So how do we react and adjust as brands? So up until this point, most brands thought vertically, right? They were interacting and engaging with us in one way. And that might be through one core product or one core service, right? But fans, consumers, enthusiasts want to see brands acting and behaving horizontally. What do I mean by that, right? They want to see new products and services that complement the existing product or services that they've grown to expect, grown to depend on, and grown to enjoy. And when they do, the brands do well, but in many cases, they are not prepared for that, and so they suffer. And so those brands that are not able to move horizontally are going to find it increasingly difficult to cater to those growing fans, enthusiasts, and consumers who have higher and higher expectations. So what does this mean? What's the implications in the connective economy for brands that are challenged by consumers? Well, to succeed, brands need to rethink how and where they make their presence felt, right? This has to be something that is relevant, something that they bring a point of advantage to, and will enable consumers to improve and enhance the experience in their lives. So let's think about this from a lateral perspective, right? So brands up until this point have been thinking vertically. Consumers expect them to broaden horizontally. And so changing direction can prompt many brands to think more laterally. And what do I mean by that? Well, when they think more laterally, when they think about creating new products, new services, new experiences for their fans, for their enthusiasts, for their consumers, they contribute more to those consumers' lives, right? They're taking more share of mind. And when they do that, they offer them a better chance to have a better engagement with the consumer. And so in order to do that, because all brands don't have the resources or the capability to be able to do all of the things that the fans and enthusiasts want them to do, they need to start to think about who else can help them. Who are those partners? Are they other investors? Are they franchises? Are they licensees? They have to think broadly and say, okay, how can we bring more core expertise into our organization, but keep it under the umbrella of our one brand and build our universe to deliver against what the consumer, the fan, the enthusiast expects. This all hovers around the term of motivation, right? So what are the implications of the connected economy for brands? Well, making the move from hunting for share of market to appealing to share of life requires that brands dig beyond the big data, what happens, to what causes consumers to want to move towards them. What's motivating consumers, right? What are the things that are happening in consumers' lives? What are their behaviors? What are their biases? And what are their habits? And how do brands pay attention to those and incorporate those feelings, concerns, behaviors into the brand experience in a way that it stays connected to the brand promise and position, but allows for the consumer to have a bigger and better experience with the brand. So, brands that will flourish, the brands that will flourish are those that are most connected to consumers' lives and patterns of thinking and are specifically structured to cater to that. Let me repeat that. The brands that will flourish are those that are most connected to consumers' lives and patterns of thinking and are specifically structured to cater to that. This statement in today's world, when we're dealing with a pandemic, is even more crucial, right? Those brands that are not tone deaf, right, that are paying attention to the experience that we're living in today, and then adjusting to be respectful and responsive and nurturing to us and delivering against their promise, are the ones that we're going to look to and enjoy and appreciate more than anything. those that keep acting like the world is taking place 3 months ago and are showing us advertisements where large groups are gathering or pushing product or service that really doesn't have the table stakes to be in the conversation today are going to be punished severely. So we have to be really responsive to the needs of the consumer now more than anything. And I believe the brands that do that are going to distance themselves from the rest of them. Increased connectivity has made it easier for brands to be discovered. That we all know, and that is 100% true, and there's no denying it. But equally so, increased connectivity has accelerated the rate at which people can lose interest. And we've seen that in our own lives with the brands that we've experienced, right? In one moment, that brand may be the be all end all and everything. And then a day later, there's something new taking place that's replacing it, right? And we see that with new technology and new brands that are coming into our lives. They're like a shooting star, right? They are brilliant. They gather so much excitement, and then all of a sudden they burnt out and they're gone. So how do we counter this term called FADR? And let me explain what FADR is. Mark DeSoma, who helped me develop the Lasso model, he defined FADR as things, ideas, people, brands, scandals, and successes that now rise to global awareness with immediate speed, but fade just as quickly. And that gets to the point I was just mentioning, right? So how do we counter this FADR experience? Well, let me take a case study or an example with Apple, right? Apple built its name in the early 1980s as a hardware company. And they used that hardware, so the Mac, the Macintosh, these were well before we ever started dealing with them on mobile devices, right? But the company used its fan base of over 1 billion global active device users to expand its way into the services sector. What do they have for us today? iTunes, iCloud, Apple Care, Apple Music, Apple Pay, the App Store, and probably several others I haven't even listed, right? And what they did was they took that connection that they built with the hardware platform and said, how do we get into and improve the lives of our consumers in a way that keeps us relevant, important, needed, and valued? And we know on top of that, that this new part of their business allows for immense expandability and profitability. The services sector delivers for Apple greater than 60% share, which is far superior than the hardware, which probably only gives about half of that. I think we have one more person joining, so just bear with me for a second. We do. All right, welcome. Back to Apple. So what is the point I'm making here? The point is we have to stay relevant. We have to stay expansive. We have to think horizontally while the consumer is doing the same thing. And we have to do it in a way that allows us to grow and avoid this, this tragedy, which Mark DeSoma calls FADR. So how do we leverage connectivity? According to Darren Garnham, who's the Chief Executive Officer at MTW and former CCO, Chief Commercial Officer of Mind Candy, he says, digital gains you reach in the conversation, digital gains you reach in conversation, but it doesn't convert to cash easily. To do that, it's vital to offer physical products that take the digital offering to a new level of experience in exchange of money. In the case of Mind Candy, the revenue came from millions and millions in sales of Moshi collectibles and books. So Mind Candy owned the game, the digital game called Moshi Monsters, and they had millions of connections with consumers, mostly in the UK market. And they realized that that connection was powerful, but it wasn't as powerful if it only stood on its own. So they realized by expanding into collectibles, into books, into plush, they could engage with their consumers more of the time, right? Because now the consumer was holding the book, holding the collectible, holding the plush when they weren't playing the game. And it also created another opportunity for them to build their revenue and build their profitability, and to allow them to stay more relevant than just being one-dimensional, which was the challenge that we talked about looking at the vertical and the horizontal. According to Nicholas Lovell, who coined the term the curve, we can adjust or to overcome this challenge through the thesis that the curve helps brands calibrate what they offer to move consumers from freeloaders into super fans. And we all know the freeloaders, we're all freeloaders, right? We'll have something that we're willing to take the free version of, but resist at as much as possible to buy into the paid version. And it's only when those platforms deliver so much value to us on the free level, and we see the value that they're going to deliver to us in the paid level, that we're willing to move. And so according to Nicholas Lovell, the curve thesis uses free to find the audience, then uses technology to figure out what people value. And then they let their biggest fans spend as much as they want on what they value, right? Give them options and let them buy into what's important to them. And he says that success lies in building the relationship and the community through variation and tailoring. So let's think about all of these things as we try to build a bigger and bigger universe and connect with our fans and our enthusiasts and our consumers in a more relevant way in this connective economy. So how do we do that? How do we cater to customers across their lives? Well, we should focus on where customers could encounter our brands across their lives, why those experiences would both reinforce what people know about our brand, but also how it would prompt them to see the brand in a new and hopefully exciting way. And if we look at Disney, they're a perfect example of a platform that has done this, right? And they've done it well. They have a whole range of properties, right? It started out almost 100 years ago with Steamboat Willie. That was the introduction of the Mickey Mouse character. It was done through feature film. And then after that feature film, it came television. And then after television, they created Disneyland. And then they created Disney World. And along with Disneyland and Disney World, they created a whole line of products. Products that we love and love to cherish and love to collect, right? So think about all of the Disney characters and the way that fans engage with them. And on top of that, what did they do? They created new platforms like cruise ship experiences. And so they're thinking more and more and more about how to stay connected to their fans. Now they're challenged right now because many of their experiences, many of the ways that we engage with the brand are experiential, but I'm sure they're thinking of ways to help mitigate this problem. And it's probably more through their online platforms, right? So they've got Disney Plus as an example that they put in place just a short while ago that's probably helping them tremendously in this current state that we're in. So, you know, what can we do and how can we think about approaching and connecting with fans? Well, Richard Branson has a view on how brands should look to gain greater share of life. But I want to mention something about this because it's kind of a juxtaposed position about the way he thinks about engaging with consumers with what has happened, the way his brand is perceived. According to Tom Oakley, Virgin used to have the image of being a rebellious brand. But with Virgin Money and Virgin Trains and probably a few other platforms, it doesn't have the single message and association anymore. In my book, Expand, Grow, Thrive, I talk about the brand expansion point. That's that point of emotional connection that we should pivot around and to ensure that we engage with our fans in the most meaningful way. Well, Richard Branson with the Virgin brand has really deviated a little bit from this. And so let's look at what he says about how to gain a greater share of life with your fans and consumers. The first thing, add fun to people's lives through what you do. And I think we'd all agree that Virgin does that. Second, deliver experiences that people want, not just what you think they want or that you are used to giving them. So go beyond that, think beyond that. Third, enter areas where you can make an impact. These are all great, great platforms to work or build a brand around. And then the last thing he says, don't be afraid to leave if things don't go to plan. And he's had to do that also, right? I don't think Virgin Cola is around anymore, and Virgin Records, I'm not sure is around anymore. So he's done that. The only thing I would challenge him on is, has he thought about his brand expansion point? Has he lost connection with consumers and with fans and enthusiasts? Because the brand that was once known as a rebellious brand has kind of gotten diluted. So that would be the one area I would challenge him. But as far as all these other things that he has to share, I agree wholeheartedly that these are things that are important to do, especially in situations like ours today. But more than anything, brands have to be able to act quickly. And I think brands are doing that more and more every day, right? They've learned that this is important to do and they're responding. A lot of examples are the new advertising that we're seeing today that's paying attention to the fact that we are in a pandemic and that brands have to talk to their fans and their consumers in a different way. So I applaud them for doing that, because that means that they had to jump very quickly to take whatever was in the pipeline, put it on hold, and come up with something new. According to Deloitte brands can lift their agility by A, pinpointing areas of underperformance in the portfolio and implementing product or pricing changes to make them more attractive. B, rethinking product development so that it's consistent, repeatable, and coordinated. Brands probably need to do that more than anything right now. C, focusing on the overall competitiveness of the portfolio. D, developing modular product architectures that allow brands to leverage a common structure and create tailored products more efficiently. And finally, E, find new ways to go to market. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but that could be licensing, that could be joint ventures, that could be franchising, that could be through acquisition. Success is about connecting the dots, but we need to know which dots to join, where to join them, when to join them, with whom to join them, and at what margin. We need to institute more integrated discussions with sales, product development, and licensing teams. What typically happens is each of these groups and the brand group are all in silos, and they tend to stay in silos because that's where they're most comfortable. But where the greatest opportunity to connect and endear consumers to our brands and move them up the hierarchy from preference to loyalty to insistence to advocacy is to get out of those silos, to cooperate and work with each other to build better and greater and more meaningful and more relevant experiences. And then finally, create the best branded presence possible in each market and avoid those traditional launch and maintain strategies. There's no time, there's no opportunity anymore to do this. The companies that are doing this are just falling further and further and further behind. So let me leave you with 10 powerful motivations that cause people to think and behave differently. The first one is familiarity. Give consumers more reasons and better ways to grow their existing relationship with you. As I gave in the Apple example earlier, right? It started out with hardware. It started out with laptops, and then it moved on to the iPod, and then the iPhone, and then the iPad. And these were all great devices, and we still use them today. But what do we engage with more? We engage with Apple Pay, Apple Care, iTunes, and all of those services that Apple offers. That's the familiarity that I'm talking about. Number two, momentum. Give consumers more opportunities to participate in something they want to see happen. An example of that might be Red Bull destinations, right? Red Bull destinations are ways for fans of the brand, consumers of the brand, to go to spectacular destinations, to engage in adventures that are once in a lifetime, or to meet celebrities, VIPs, and athletes. So a very special experience that Red Bull gets to use because they continue to build momentum. Number three, curiosity. allow people to explore or engage with the brand they thought they knew in new and interesting ways. I say the brand should be surprisingly consistent and consistently surprising. So an example of this was the whole Pokemon Go platform, right? Pokemon was a brand in and of itself, highly successful in the early to mid 90s through to when Pokemon Go came out in, I think, 2015. They engaged with a company called Niantic Labs, who had their own cool software. Both properties were successful, but when they combined Pokemon and Niantic Labs to create Pokemon Go, 1 and 1 equaled 100. And I mean that sincerely, because in the first 6 months, I think they had over 100 million downloads. And by the end of the second year, it was like 500 million downloads. And you might say, oh, that's something that happened in the past. Well, I can tell you since then, they've added another 500 million in the last 5 years. So they are still relevant, while they may not be as relevant as they were when it first came out. The next one is continuity. Bring back an idea that is deeply valued, but with a new twist. So an example of that to me was Mickey Mouse. For their 75th anniversary, they created a whole line of apparel, which just seems kind of wild and crazy when you think about Mickey Mouse, because it was vintage clothing. But what they did to celebrate it is they put it on models, and they had those models show up at different events. They didn't really broadcast it too much, but they let PR pick it up. And they sold this vintage clothing in Fred Segal, which is an exclusive retail outlet. And do you know that line of clothing today continues to be ranked as one of the top lines of apparel in the marketplace? So talk about continuity with a twist. For Mickey Mouse to be able to do that is incredible. Number 5, extension. Take an idea that people already like further than it has been taken before. I like the example here with Hasbro. Hasbro is typically, when we think about Hasbro, we grew up with it as games that we experienced in our life. But then they took consumers on a journey, and you could find Hasbro engaging with them in theme parks, in retail outlets, even involved in feature film. And so there's an example where they've used extension to connect with consumers in a meaningful way. Number 6, advantage. Give people access to something they would otherwise not be able to get. So here I like this example with Delta Airlines and with the program they have around the miles that we collect. Every year, I think around the first of the year, or maybe it's at the end of the year, they have this exclusive product opportunity where you can take your miles and buy these or purchase with your miles these all-time one-of-a-kind kinds of adventures, opportunities to go to productions, things like that are totally only accessible through the loyalty program, through a certain commitment of a certain number of miles to that. And that to me is a great example of Delta using their advantage. Number 7, immediacy. Speed up the time with which mundane things get done. I love this Starbucks example here because, especially with COVID-19, right? There was no restaurants open, but there's a drive-through down the street from us. And what I can do is I can get on the Starbucks app, order my latte, order my sandwich, get in my car, drive down there, hit the Starbucks, and by the time I get to the window, it's ready for me. There is complete immediacy, and they've allowed me to do that because they care about me as their consumer. In fact, I just celebrated a birthday, and they gave me a free drink or a free food product. And it used to be up until, I think this past year, if you didn't use it on the day of your birthday, it was gone. So it was like 5 o'clock in the evening, and I was deciding whether or not I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity, whether I wanted to get out of my house, which I was thinking I wanted to do. But when I went on the app, it told me that I had a whole month to take advantage of this offer. So again, Starbucks being smart about how they engage with their fans and their consumers. Number 8, community. Unite people behind an idea and give them the means to express or support that belief. one of the things that I got involved with the last month or so to try to make a little bit of a difference, and I say a very small difference, is on Meals on Wheels in Atlanta. I just felt like there was an opportunity for me to get out of my house, which I was really wanting to do, and deliver some meals to people who were really in need. So I did that a couple of Saturday mornings earlier, late in last month and earlier this month. And then I had an opportunity to actually put those meals onto vehicles. And what I felt like made me so love the Meals on Wheels property and what they stand for is the community that they created. This is a wonderful organization that is across the country, but each community, in the case of Atlanta, I felt really like I was a member of it, even though I'd only volunteered one time. Number 9, capability. Make something happen for people that they have always craved in their lives and do it in an unprecedented way. For me, the example that came to mind was the Make-A-Wish Foundation. What an incredible platform that is, right? These are typically opportunities for terminally ill children that get the chance to meet with their greatest hero or their greatest fan. I saw an example the other day, and I was watching a special called The Last Dance about Michael Jordan and his 1998 run for the championship, where he always took time out for young kids and making himself available. And so to me, I thought about what's an unprecedented way for an opportunity to occur that's once in a lifetime. And Make-A-Wish Foundation surely delivers on that. And then finally, number 10 is exclusivity. Offer people something that builds on what they already know, but let them experience it in ways few others will. And I thought about the way that credit cards give us a certain level of status and credibility. And I thought about the American Express Black Card. I don't own a Black Card. I haven't really been able to justify in my mind spending the $2,500 a year to have that card, but I know that it offers a tremendous amount of exclusivity. And so I'm sure you can think of other examples as well, but to me, credit cards do a pretty good job with this. All right, well, we've kind of reached the end of today's presentation. Again, I really have enjoyed the opportunity to share with you some thoughts on the connective economy. As I mentioned, the next webinar will start the lateral aspect of the lasso model. So we'll talk about lateral and then addictive and then storied, then scalable and then ownable in the next 5 weeks. And this is a link to that, which we'll make available to you if you want to measure your expansion optimality of your own brand. But I'm really appreciative of the chance to talk to you today. I hope you'll consider joining us and signing up for our newsletter. And at this point, I'm ready to take any questions. So I'll stop the sharing, and again, thank you so much for your time.
I have a question.
Right. Yes, please.
Okay, so I wasn't really sure, or could you explain more the difference between like momentum advantage and exclusivity?
Sure. I mean, I think these are all nuances, but the point of it is momentum says that you've got something going. I'm trying to think of an example of a brand that really people are engaging in a big way. So maybe TikTok is an example of that, right? They're building tremendous momentum, and they can use that momentum in meaningful ways, and they should not think just vertically about just the one product they offer, but consider how they can engage with consumers, fans, enthusiasts in many different ways. So ride that momentum in order to be able to do more and to take advantage of their relevance at this time. I think the second one you talked about was advantage. Is that correct?
Yes.
So advantage really to me says that you've established in the minds of your consumers or fans a point of differentiation. And I use that example with Delta, right? Because many of us who have one particular airline that we fly almost exclusively because of the loyalty program, they know those folks that own those loyalty programs know that they have a powerful way to connect with us, the members, right? And they want to try to move us away from thinking of this loyalty program as almost like a ball and chain into something that's actually meaningful and different. And so I love the example where they use the points, and you can even give those points away, right? So you can donate those points. So this gives them, Delta, a chance to connect with their most loyal fans, their most loyal customers, really. I don't know that we're all considered to be fans, in a way that takes advantage of that relationship that they have. And then what was the last one? I'm sorry.
Exclusivity.
Exclusivity. So here, this is more about the value that we're offering to our customers. So the example I'm using is we all own a credit card, and many of these are getting more digitally used, but nevertheless, the idea or the principle that we have credit that we can use to purchase something, right? But then there's these particular levels that brands can offer us in order to give us more exclusive opportunities. So I think, for example, one of the benefits of a black card, which is literally it's black in color, it's got American Express, you can barely see your name on it. I've seen a few of them. Like I said, I don't own one. I'm happy with my platinum card, but it will give you access to different exclusive clubs like airline clubs or hotel clubs. And there's many other things that it offers, which is a step above the day-to-day high quality, high standard, high expectation that we have that we get to buy into. And that's what I mean by exclusivity. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Anyone else have a question? Well, either I was spectacular or you're all asleep.
No, I have a question here.
Okay, please.
All right, so thanks for your presentation. It's been marvelous. My question is, what suggestions would you make to an entrepreneur that's created a groundbreaking methodology that clearly serves a crucial need in our society today, but doesn't have any competitors? Or stated differently, what would an entrepreneur do to influence consumers to engage with a brand to where there are no current parallels?
Michael, thank you for that question. Yeah, there's some huge benefits of what you're offering, but there's some huge detractors. You know, one of the things that we talk about is that competition actually helps all the members that are competing, because competition allows for the members to build awareness of the category. So what you're saying is you have something that's unique and different, and because you don't have any competition, you have some exclusivity around that, right? You have a value add, but the challenge is that you don't have a lot of awareness, that fans or consumers or enthusiasts don't really know about the category that you're trying to promote. So your biggest challenge is to build awareness. And so I would say the important thing to do, and you and I have talked about this separately, is really define why you do what you do and make that why known to everyone. Because what that will do, and then try to shout it out as best you can in a meaningful way across as many platforms as you can, and realize that you're at the top of a mountain, a snowy mountain with with snow on it, and you're a little snowball. And over time, I believe as you keep consistently telling your story, consistently reinforcing the why of what you're doing, continuing to add the value that you're adding, and then try to shed light on it as best you can in unique and different ways, that you can then start to build some awareness. But I would say there's a lot of smart people on this call, and maybe somebody else could jump in and give you some perspective as well. And I would welcome others on the call to help Michael answer that question.
Michael, this is Bob. And I've done a few small entrepreneurial companies. If I could, the first thing I would try to do is identify a small group of what I thought would be potential alpha users. By alpha, I mean they would see, alpha people always lead. These would be people who would most be likely to use the technology if they knew about it, and people, they've got to have both, who would be likely to have contacts and to share and who talk about what they do. Now that's a hard thing to do, to identify those people, but it'll be a very small group. And if you can identify them, then you can figure out ways to target them. Social media is one thing, but to me, if you've got a truly different product like that, you can't go about it the way the masses do. You can't do a Coca-Cola type of thing. It's got to be entrepreneurial. It's got to be highly focused. And then you don't even hope to make money with the alpha people. You hope that they will take your product to the next level. So it's best a 2-3 year type of iteration thing you're looking at, if you've got low dollars to do it with. That's just one opinion.
No, I think that's great. Both suggestions were wonderful. The alpha male potential users, I like that suggestion very much. So thank you both.
Why don't you, Michael, why don't you tell the audience what actually your product is? It's really cool. And by the way, thank you, Bob. He's very humble. He's done a lot more than he suggested he did. But Michael, share with the group what it is you do, because I think it's really neat.
Well, I'm a fitness expert, Pilates personal training, that has taken up the outdoors and have become an expert in the outdoors as well. Specifically, I've created adventures internationally to places like the Antarctic Peninsula, from Argentina across the Drake Passage on a 60-foot sailboat that took 2.5 days. So that, just getting there was the adventure, to exploring northernmost parts of Svalbard and going in a sailboat to 8 degrees north, to simple hiking, mountains in the U.S. and Canada and Greece and Italy and in other parts of the world, to hut hiking. So basically, I've gotten people conditioned mentally and physically for these things that they want to do. I research, based on the client, I research these variety of opportunities out there, adventures that took weeks and weeks of research, and then I put together suggestions, propose those to the clients, and then they, based on their approval, and then we form a truly tailored adventure to which I help them get conditioned mentally, physically. I put them into environments where it's raining, there's storms, and they have to make different decisions under pressure. So when they're away from home, they're not freaking out. So that's something that
Michael, you ought to get with me on the side. One of the things I'm involved with is a company I own, a company called Fitz, and we make high performance socks. You found us on Mount Everest and places like that. We're not particularly well known, but it is the best. And also, we work with people, giving them experiences through other platforms, primarily nonprofit, but all around the world. And there may be some opportunities for us to work together on that. And I would not be your contact, but I would give you the contacts on that. But I mean, it'd just be a small thing. But for instance, we were part of founding something called One World Health, and some other things that where there might be some opportunities for us working together. That wouldn't create business, but it'd give you some exposure.
Michael, I'll give you Bob's contact information, but thank you for sharing. Bob, first, thank you for reaching out to Michael, but Michael, thank you for sharing that. One day I want to go with you to the Antarctic Peninsula. That's on my bucket list. I don't know about the rest of you, but to me that sounds so crazy and amazing, but I know that I would have to be so mentally and physically prepared for that. but I know with you as a guide, we'd get through it.
Yes, sir.
While you were sharing your story, Maureen Riddle wrote that the following: thank you, Pete, for the presentation. She's multitasking, but one of the things that she shared was in the collegiate market, there's a lot of struggle with the balance of licensing masks or things that are near PPE, protective equipment, right? What's the first letter P stand for? Even for no medical use. You know, that's an interesting point you brought up, Maureen. I definitely think that there could be an opportunity here, but you have to be careful, right? Because these big collegiate markets, the brand has a certain promise, the brand has a certain architecture, the brand has a certain positioning, and you have to juxtapose that against the use of PPE. And so if there's a way to do that that can be seen as meaningful, then I think there's an opportunity, but fans might see that as an inappropriate thing to do. And so there would be some concern there. Anita, you're on the call. I bet you would have a point of view about that.
I'm sorry, I actually had a child talking to me at the time of the question. So please.
All right,
I'll
I'll mention the question. What about using licensed brands on PPE equipment or other even if not for medical use?
I did see Maureen's comment in the chat. Yeah, there is a hesitancy, especially in larger corporate brands, to put their brand on safety equipment in general, or even I've had it on automotive equipment, as a question, because if an accident should happen or something, there's like a question around liability. They're afraid that basically they would get sued, that if the person got sick or got hurt or what have you, in a litigious environment that we live in today, right, that their brand didn't protect the person when it should have, or some type of liability in that respect. That's been something that has happened, or a conversation I've had in my past. But there are, some brands which are a little bit less concerned, or really, feel like it's more important to get the branding out there and support the cause versus, running that risk where they see there's a type of suing type of issue, right? So I think it's up to the brand to see and balance that on their own, to see how much they really can take the risk versus not take the risk. Again, some are more risk averse than others, so that's really where it comes into play, whether you're going to do it or not. But I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a great opportunity, especially if it has a component of charity with it, because so much, nowadays, especially in this, new window, it's been heightened, but really in the last year to 2 years, even more than that, the consumers are looking for more cause-related marketing and opportunities, and to support those brands that do those types of activities. So, having a cause and a charity related to your PPE branding and licensing could maybe help, minimize that risk if you're partnering with a legitimate company that does that.
I knew you were the right person to call on, Anita. Excellent answer.
Sorry about the distraction, though.
We all have those distractions in our homes, believe me. So hopefully, Maureen, you heard that, but if not, it's going to be recorded, and then you'll be able to get the recording later, and I'll make sure you know. So anyone else have any comment or question or thought that they'd like to share before we close today? Well, listen, I've really enjoyed this. It's been a lot of fun. We've done 3 webinars so far, and I can't wait to keep it going. I hope you found value in it. As promised, this is being recorded so that it will be posted on my YouTube channel, and we will make sure that you get a copy of that or a link to that. And again, have a great rest of your day, no matter what time of day it is, and I look forward to having you participate again in the future. Thank you guys so much for your time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.